Now, there are several studies which indicate that the pattern of social behavior is often related to the kind of roles which are ascribed to males and females in society. There are several studies about pro-social behavior like sharing, supporting, taking care, and it has been found that females are more prone to show greater tendency in the case of helping, support, and all that. In fact, their behavior is quite in favor of facilitating pro-social behaviors. On the other hand, there are studies which indicate that aggressive behaviors are more in men. In fact, if you go to data about violence and crime, all that, you will see that males are predominantly involved in those expressions of anger and aggression. Now, if you look at the evolutionary pattern and the involvement of women in reproductive activities, also providing care to children and nursing, gestation is there. You find that all these behaviors become very important in case of female, and gradually we may say something like cumulative culture, that all these things are deposited, they accumulate, and they formulate a pattern of behavior and a role expectation pertaining to female and male. Then there is another important point which should be noted, that there is intensive social learning. From early childhood, children are asked. In fact, when the baby is born, baby is male or female, and immediately the expectations, the kind of dress, the kind of response which is given to the baby, all that is structured in different ways. So, strong socialization is there, and gradually you find patterns of difference in mate preference. What kind of male is preferred and what kind of female is preferred. You find that. And the most important thing which has happened in the case of in this evolutionary development is the emergence of patriarchy, and how status and power is distributed between male and female in our society. So gradually we find that decision making or having authority or having access to resources, these are the issues which are regulated by your membership to the gender, where you are a male or female. Now, the emphasis on reproductive activities, socialization practices, combined with power and status differences, you find that the whole situation is reorganized. Let me bring here some of the Indian concerns which are very important in this context. Being male and being female, being woman and being men is pictured, nurtured in many, many ways. In Indian context, we frequently learn that a woman is Devi, goddess. We have all kinds of goddesses. You have Saraswati, you have Lakshmi, you have Parvati. Now, they are considered powerful in the sense that they take care of you. And we often read, Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devata, that gods are present in those places where women are worshipped. We also find another important set of revelations. They are available in our mythological stories. The emphasis on chastity, and you have Sita, you have Savitri. Now, Pativrata becomes a model. This is one part of the story. Contrary to this, the participation of women in different life spheres very clearly shows disparities between men and women. While a male child is preferred, you know that there has been practice that if a girl baby is born, parents killed them because they wanted a male child. So preference for male, so that the family tradition continues, is emphasized. And there are many, many restrictions. We know about low literacy in women. We know that they are not allowed to live independently, participate in many activities, and this kind of discrimination is available in many, many ways. Even the nutrition which is available to a child depends on whether the child is male or female. Such discrimination has been there. So, we face a very complex situation. You have a model of woman as goddess, and you have life where there is a lot of discrimination. Women's presence in public life is still quite low. In fact, when constitutional change was introduced, modification was there, and women were given uh, reservation, uh, one-third representation in various public bodies, including Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha, and Panchayats particularly. A change has taken place, and now gradually there is some change, but still it is not satisfactory. Still, we find that the incidence of violence with women, incidence of dowry related deaths, suicides, cases of rape, gang rape, acid attacks. If you look at that data, that indicates that we have not been able to restore the balance. We are still discriminating, and women do not have access to resources in the same degree. They do not participate in different activities in the same way. Restrictions are there. And all these things dealing with half of the population indicate a gap in our planning and performance in relation to the rights of women. A lot of work is going on about restoring human rights with a special reference to women. How that has to be done. Perhaps these issues must have been referred to in other lectures, so I am not going to the details of that. But I would like to mention that, for example, sexual harassment, we know about the Vishakha guidelines and we know about various provisions, how to ensure safe and secure workplace. And there is also a kind of challenge which we face in society, which is not so obvious, and that is related to family life. The burden which is shared by women, the contribution of women is not acknowledged. In fact, a lot of work in the informal organizational sector remains unrecognized. If you look at the wage pattern, you find that similar work by male and female is not acknowledged in the same way when it comes to paying the wages. So that discrimination is there. So the condition of women in terms of their empowerment has a lot of scope for intervention. And we know that gradually a number of laws have been introduced, changes have been introduced to provide specific provisions to ensure happy, healthy life to women, but we are still far away from the goal of equality. Women and men are not treated equally in different walks of life. They are human beings, but they don't have the same privilege. Contrary to this, the burden the stress, the challenge is more in the case of women. It becomes more complex in another situation where a woman is working and woman is a uh, officer, or woman is a doctor, woman is an professor or anything. Now she has to run the home and she has to take care of the professional burden. In many families, the husband does not acknowledge the contribution of woman or wife. What I want to emphasize is that the distribution of responsibilities, the kind of arrangements which are made in family setup are still unfavorable when we talk about women. So this discrimination in family and also discrimination in work life, discrimination in public life creates a challenge what to do with this. And at times, this discrimination, this kind of deprivation is not perceived, is not examined, is not recognized. You will take action if it is recognized. But in many circumstances, it is not acknowledged. So, work-life balance, a theme which is being considered in organizational studies, how to create a balance between the demands of professional work life and the demands of family. This becomes a challenge. There are other issues which come in picture. They deal with change in the family structure. Now we have some provision that if a child is born and maternity leave is available. But the kind of circumstances that we have, the presence of father-in-law and mother-in-law or some elder person in the family is helpful in upbringing of children. And with increase in nuclear families, particularly in the urban setup, where there is more mobility, the situation becomes more complex. The relationship between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law and father-in-law, all that becomes a problem. Now, if daughter-in-law is going to work, a supportive father-in-law and mother-in-law will provide a different kind of system and things will be in place. But if they are not supportive, they have a different attitude, then it creates a challenge. And at times, there is frustration, conflict, stress, and in many cases it results to mental health issues or even attempts of self-harm and suicide and all that. So when we talk about the social change, particularly in the Indian context, the scenario is very varied. If you go to the rural setup, if you go to the different classes, the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class, the gender roles are quite varied. And there are some people who are very fortunate and who have support and who have received education, who have developed skills, and who are able to realize their potential. There are many who have difficulty in accessing even minimum support and who are frustrated. So it's a very peculiar situation. Gradually, the education sector is being approached more by women, particularly in the urban sector. We often find that in higher educational setup, more participation of women is there. Girl students are coming up. It's a good sign. But the industrial setup, the professional world is still not open to women for, or I will say that they are not ready to receive them as it should be. So we need to take steps to create a kind of initiative in the workplace which has a kind of sensibility, who the officers, if they have some empathy, if they are able to appreciate and realize the concerns and problems and challenges of women, perhaps they will provide opportunities for their growth. So, in different sectors, we need to make provisions so that equality and justice can be made available to women and they are not maltreated. We often notice that violence, crime, and availability of various facilities which are important for women. If you take data of this kind, you will see that it goes against women. I think that to create a democratic setup where everyone has opportunity to realize the potential and to be a productive member of society and contribute to the growth of society, attempts should be made to ensure well-being of men and women both. So, the gender issue is not a conceptual issue. It is an important aspect of our social life, and women folk has been neglected and their rights need to be restored as human beings. I hope that the efforts which are being made by the feminist scholars, by the researchers in the departments of women's studies, are providing, input to identify the problems. And I think concerted effort should be made to act on the recommendations of various committees which are there, the various provisions which are there. They have to be taken seriously. And I think the growth and development of women needs to be ensured through different mechanisms, and the provisions in our constitution, the laws which have been created for them, they need to be scrutinized, and there should be greater provision to provide opportunities and bring them at the same level where men are present. I hope that the gender issue needs to be understood, analyzed, and steps should be taken to restore the dignity which women deserve. Thank you very much.